let me give you a piece of evidence number 3. Moral absolutes exist, and they are best explained by a moral law giver. Moral absolutes exist, and they are best explained by a moral lawgiver. Now, there is an absolute moral law. What do I mean by an absolute moral law? What I mean by it is that there are moral principles that are true, whether anybody believes in them or not. By claiming that there's an absolute moral law, I am treating moral principles like mathematical principles. There is an objective mathematical law. 2 and 2 is 4, whether anybody believes that or not. As a matter of fact, we discovered that 2 and 2 is 4. We didn't invent that, and we discover the moral law, we don't invent it. There is an objective, absolute, real moral law that is a part of the universe. Now, what if you find somebody, by the way, let me give you some examples of moral absolutes. Number 1, it's wrong to torture little babies for the fun of it. That is an absolute moral law. If somebody denies that that's an absolute, they need therapy, not an argument. Okay? Torturing little babies for the fun of it is wrong. Here's another one. Kindness and honesty are virtues, not vices. Kindness and honesty are virtues, not vices. That's a part of the absolute moral law. Now, what if you find somebody who says, I don't believe in an absolute moral law? What if you find somebody who says, no, I don't believe in an absolute moral law? The best thing to do is to find out what they care deeply about, treat it like it's relative, and see what happens. And it will be like teeing off a golf ball in the shower. It will come right back at you, and you will find that absolutists come out of the closet very quickly. Now, let me illustrate this. A few years ago, I ran across a young man in Southern California here in Orange County that said that he was a moral relativist. All right, so I found out the guy loves the environment, cares deeply about the environment. So I said, you know, I don't know what you're going to think of me, but I've got 4 buddies, and we meet once a month, all 5 of us, and we each kick $50 a piece into a kitty. We buy a 100-gallon drum of sulfuric acid. We go out on Lake Paris, and we dump the acid in the lake. And we've taken a bet ahead of time as to how many fish we'll kill. And whoever gets closest to the number that actually floats to the surface wins the remainder of the kitty. I said, God, it is an absolute blast. Yeah. Well, you could see the blood vessels on this guy's neck swelling. And I said, you know, I'm not an expert in body language, but it looks to me that you think what my friends and I are doing is... And then I said, sir, you know, I don't think you're a relativist. I think you're a relativist where it's convenient to your lifestyle. But you're an absolutist in the areas you care about. The truth is, everybody knows that there's a moral absolute. The problem is, where do laws come from? Laws come from people. They're commands. If there's an absolute moral law, it makes sense to believe that there's an absolute person that gave the moral law. Now, there could be more than one of them, but if you can explain the moral law by one God, the principle of simplicity, which says that you shouldn't, if you've got 2 explanations and they both explain the facts, prefer the simpler to the more complicated explanation, this then supports monotheism as opposed to polytheism. So because monotheism is a simpler explanation than postulating many gods as the source of the moral order. In the Nuremberg trials, the Nazi war criminals appealed to relativism to argue their case. They basically said that you don't have a right to judge us in our culture because everything's relative. And then one of the judges in the Nuremberg trial said, you're forgetting there is a law above the law. Meaning that there's an absolute moral order or law that's above human cultural law in terms of which we can judge cultures to be moral or immoral. The question is, we know where these come from, persons. Where did this come from? The best explanation would be a person, a pretty good-sized person.